Hey, what's up, guys? Vigilant Texan here. Today we're gonna see if we can figure out when was the Tartarian Empire. When did they actually exist? What was the timeline of when they are? The reason I asked this partially is because of a video that I watched last week from some meatheads that I used to study Torah with, and they basically made a video with Tartaria in the title. A couple of them ended up being clickbait, and they're usually just them kind of spouting prophecy half the time, and then a little bit about Tartaria, and they had no clue what they were talking about. But they tried to use scripture that discussed the time of Moses and other ancient sources that also discussed that during the time of Moses, when the children of Israel were in captivity in Egypt, that he was trying to say that the plagues that Moses put on the Egyptians were what caused the mud flood. That was the mud flood, and that then he was even trying to claim that Tartaria, excuse me, was that's when Tartaria existed, was during Moses' time and back during the Egyptians and Babylonians, and that's when the empire existed. And they were also trying to say that they were an evil satanic empire, which, well, gee, aren't they all? But I don't think they were nothing like the current cult of Baal that runs, the evil cabal that runs stuff now. So I figured let me show some evidence and some proof to show that it existed, what I believe, during that section of time that we talked about in my last video, between the Nicene Council and like the 1600s, 17 and 1800s, in there, right in that area where their controllers could have easily falsified a bunch of history. So we're going to look at a lot of things today that are going to place the Tartarians' reign somewhere in there. Also going to look at some of the different names that the Tartarians may have went by, and some of the different empires that our controllers might have decided to give credit for, when in reality it was actually the Tartarians, but they couldn't just erase history completely. So they just kind of got rid of the name of Tartaria and then gave credit to all their accomplishments to these other empires or these other people that they thought were okay, I guess. So the first thing we're going to look at is some maps. This map, I forget where it's the time frame, I think 1700s or something, 1800s. But on this particular map, take a closer look. Whoa, not that close. Let's see. Yeah, here's where it says Tartarian. It's bad. It's not that clear there. But at any rate, then this is an interesting map here. In this map, you have Tartaria up here. Tartaria. Okay, and in this map, they have, look here, they've got the Holy Land. They've got all the way up there. They've got all of China down here. And then look over here. The same color, that reddish color shown here. They had a stronghold, half of South America and part of North America. Very interesting. Yeah, on my last video, I tried to run through some maps, but I really didn't have time to prepare that great. I'm a busy guy. I have a real job, 5 days a week. And teenage son, take care of, and stuff I'm interested in as well. But I try to do my best to help to bring some truth to these topics. Let's look at another Tartarian map. Old map. Okay, so on this one, you've got Grand Tartaria, La Grande Tartarie, and it's once again got the Holy Land, all of China, all of it. They've got all of this down here. All right. Then you look over here, boom, same color over here. They've got all of South America, but what happened over here? Somebody took over North America in red. Was this after the form of America? I don't know. Unfortunately, some of these maps that I found don't have dates. Now, I have some great ones later with dates, but what I was trying to prove here is that you have a vast empire on these maps. Look at this. Look how much. This is all Tartary. We look at the color. The color tells you who's who. Like the green, whoever the green is, this is what they had. That was probably who they were fighting against. But then look how much is Tartary. All this. All in here. All in here. Look, there's Texas. That would explain why there's all this stuff in Texas. So these maps would place it during that time span that I was talking about. Now, what's another thing we can look at to place the times? Well, if you've been keeping up, you know that I have a Facebook page where I've been collecting photos of all these churches and Tartarian power plants and buildings that were left behind and survived the mud flood. And one of the things I noticed, it was in a lot of the churches, they were built in the shape of a cross, and they were clearly Christian churches. Here's one here, St. Mary's. Just an aerial view. You can see the shape. I put the arrows on there, of course. Here's another one. And these are all churches that you can see photos of in my photo blog. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. This is just the view from above. Now, that was just a handful to let you know. So there's hundreds. So what that does there basically is just places their empire after the Messiah came, after the cross, after the form of Christianity. Now, what I believe, because I ran into another Tartary researcher who was all about them being Muslim, and that they have been relabeled as the Ottoman Empire, and that and also that they destroyed the mosques because they didn't want you to know that this great empire was Muslim. And maybe they were. Maybe they destroyed the mosques and left the Christian churches. That would sound like something that our current controllers would do, since their Christianity is the label they put on their mystery pagan religion that runs everything, and they've done it under the guise of Christianity, supposedly good. Satan appears as a saint in white. We all know how evil the Catholic Church is. So could it have been that the Tartarian Empire was multicultural, and that Christians and Muslims were living happily together, and maybe all three Abrahamic faiths were living happily together under this empire, and when they took them out, they decided to destroy the mosques and leave behind the Christian churches? Very well could have been, but these buildings that have survived the mud flood and left behind, many of them were cathedrals, of course, and they're many shaped in the shape of a cross. So the other thing that doesn't make sense about trying to put them during the time of Moses, or during the pre-Christ, is that none of the Egyptian or Babylonian or Sumerian texts talk about Tartary. Like I Google searched every single source of cuneiform tablets, or Egyptian tablets, or Sumerian tablets, or Egyptian hieroglyphs for any mention of Tartary. Couldn't find a one. And so if they weren't mentioned there, well, where were they mentioned as being existed? So we're going to look at a few of those. In the mid-19th century, European capitals were fascinated by the brilliant Russian aristocrat Varvara Dmitrievna Rimskaya-Korsakova. Now, I'm butchering these names, I'm sorry. But I did take German in high school, and I do read a lot of other languages, so I'm doing my best. Anyway, this guy, I believe it was a female, whose beauty and wit made Napoleon III's wife, Empress Eugenia, green with jealousy. Barbara, this lady, was called the Venus of Tartarus in Europe. Okay, so there's mentions of it there as late as the 19th century. Giacomo Puccini, Italian composer of the opera Turandot, one of the protagonists of which Timur, dethroned king of Tartars, father of Khalaf, so there was a mention there. And William Shakespeare's Macbeth tragedy, the witch adds a lip tartare to her potions. In Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein hunts down a monster among the wilds of Tartary in Russia, which reminds me, if you haven't seen the movie Victor von Frankenstein that just came out a few years back, I can't remember the guy's name was in it, but it's a great movie. It shows us the truth. It shows them in the 19th century, early 19th century, just moving into these abandoned Tartary cities, and it shows these horse and buggy and how they would have a great grand building and just some old wooden sign with like a hand painted, whatever on there, like totally just taking over someone else's stuff. So if you haven't seen Victor von Frankenstein, that's how the enemy's totally showing us truth in the movies and lies in the news. They've been doing it for years. That's how they do it. We want you to think that the truth is a fairy tale. Swear I heard it. Anyway, let's move along here. Yeah, watch the movie Victor von Frankenstein. In Charles Dickens' novel Great Expectations, Estella Havisham is compared to the Tartars because she is firm, arrogant, and temperamental to the last degree. In the Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer, the squirrel's tale is about the royal court of Tartary. In Robert Browning's poem, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, the Pied Piper mentions Tartary as a successful place to work. To this day, few sources have survived where you can find mentions of Tartary, but let's look at a few. The Encyclopedia Britannica's first edition of the 3 volumes in Edinburgh in 1771, on page 887, we can read the following. Tartary is a huge country in North Asia, bordering Siberia to the north and west, which is called Great Tartary. The Tartars living in southern Muscovy and Siberia are called Astrakhan, Caesarean, and Dagestan. The Tartars living in the northwestern Caspian Sea are called Kalmyks, and they occupy the territory between Siberia and the Caspian Sea. The Uzbek Tartars are Mongols who live in northern Persia and India, and finally the Tibetans who live in northwest China. They're supposedly Tartars too, so now they're tattletelling on themselves as to who are the actual, the names they've given them. Information on the Great Tartary has been preserved in the Spanish Encyclopedia, 6 volumes, you can see if you want to go look that up. Grand Tartary is present in Sermon Remenov's Siberian sketchbook from 1642, which you can see here, but it's the copy I got, just terrible. The fact that Europeans were very aware of the existence of a different Tartary is also attested by the numerous medieval geographical maps, also meaning that there were strongholds on both sides of their empire, so much so that they thought they were different people on different sides. Maybe they were multicultural, multinational. One of the earliest maps is this map of Russia, Muscovy, and Tartary, compiled by English diplomat, this guy, who was some ambassador, 1557, 1571. And this one is really hard to see the word Tartary in here. R-E. The letters are very, very far apart. T-A-R-T. Where's that other A? Maybe they're missing an R. Tar-E. Oh, R. Maybe it's over there. Whatever. Here it is on the map. Sorry. bumbling through that a bit. All right, let's see. Tartary is in the imposing atlas of the world of Mercator Hondius from the beginning of the 17th century. Tartary is represented on the maps of this. Abraham Ortelius, the famous Flemish cartographer who compiled the world's first geographical atlas containing 53 large format maps, detailed explanatory geographical texts. You can look that one up. The atlas was called Typus Orbis Terrarum, and here I've got it. Let's take a look. This one's pretty detailed. Tartaria starts here. They've got the Holy Land. They've got all this over here. And all down here. Shalaga. Let's see. Anything down here in Texas? Anything we can recognize? Not really. Coros, Tahia, but if you can notice, look, great cities. There's Florida, big cities. Huh, right? What was that? Galveston, Houston, Austin. We don't know. Interesting. 1626 map by John Speed here. Let's see what we find on this one. Tartaria. Whoops. Looks like they lost. Well, I guess, no. Still got the Holy Land. Yeah. And South America. Here we got California as an island. Can we see what's in there? Like Virginia. Mexico. Hard to see. Florida. Looks like that. Love these old maps. There's another one. 1692 map of Asia. Oh, they've lost significant amount of stuff here on this map. It's at least they've just got up here a little bit of Europe. Was that Japan? Maybe. All right, now then I found an awesome resource. I'm gonna just I don't know, there's a link to it. The Amazing Bible Timeline. This company, it's got this timeline that goes from Adam all the way to now. It's very, very, very complex. Anyway, and here they had a whole page called Tartars and Turks. Tartars and Turks. Turkics are a group of people that lived in different cultures around northern, eastern, central, western Asia, northwestern China, and patches of eastern Europe. They're listed on the Bible timeline chart with world history starting around 50 to 150 AD, right after the time of Christ, like I said. Turkic people have in common, for the most part, culture and ancient histories. The word Turkic stands for a large range of ethno-linguistic societies. Turkish people, Azerbaijanis, Shuvashes, Kazakhs, Tartars, Kirks, Turkmens, Urbeks, Bershiks, Kashman, I don't know, a whole bunch of other names that they went by. I'm not going to butcher all those. Ottoman, Turks, Malmaks, Tilmurids, maybe even Kurasaks, Huns, or the Zongzu. It is said that they were first recorded there was only the Huns or the Tartars. So they started off as just the Huns or Tartars. But if they had stayed that way, there was a possibility they would have never been such a big part of the world that's past. They began on Mount Altai, which is a tall city of Tartary and enclosed in hills full of valuable metals, bits of gold, and abundance. And what's interesting, if we look up this Mount Altai, I swear this won't take long. mountain ranges near Kazakhstan. What do you know? Now, if you search this area, God, maybe this will work. Anyway, earlier I had searched it, and there's a few breathtaking churches left behind. Where can I search this area? Guys. Yeah, Mongolia, Kazakhstan. So if I select Kazakhstan, I bet it will. Oh, there it is, right there. That's the one I was looking at. Maybe it's this one. No. Oh, wow. Look at that thing. Holy cow. Wow. Yeah. If you ever want to find some Tartarian architecture left behind, Kazakhstan is the place to be. Sorry. Alright, come back from our rabbit trail here. The tall city of Tartary, enclosed by hills, valuable metals. Okay, around that time the Huns attacked Rome. The Turks were just slaves and workers and oars and blacksmiths. It was long after the Huns lost control of Europe and the Tartars grew surprisingly fast, and the Turks arose all over the country as lords in broad lands. They were linked with treaties of peace with China, Persia, the Romans. The Turks had extended to Kamchatka in the north, Caspian in the west, and possibly the beginning of Indias in the south. And this was where the history shows the transitional kingdom of Tartars, located in the middle of Attila and Zingis. When the Turks introduced the Turkish language and Islam in Anatolia during the 11th century, it began the Turkification of many groups of people in the area. The Ottoman Beylik joined the Anatolia, joining forces. When in the ending of the 13th century, it became the Ottoman Empire. Now, is that just what they're telling us, or was that Tartary? Turkish people spread with the growth of patriotism beneath the Ottoman Empire, along with the movements around. But what I wanted to point out was when you look at this area of land that the Ottoman Empire supposedly had control of, it's very, very similar to what we see as Tartary on those maps. The timeline seems right. Let's read on. Turkish loyalties banded together even more from the War of Independence, and following the declaration of Republic of Turkey, they had a broader range of traditions and customs that mold with different factors, from Oghuls, Turkic, Anatolian, Greek, Islamic, Ottoman, and Western ways of life. So, a multicultural, a big old empire. Now, here's the interesting part. Great gatherings were established in Australia, Belgium, France, Germany, Switzerland, Netherlands, United Kingdom, and even North America. In Eastern Europe, Volga, Bulgaria turned into an Islamic territory. In the 13th century, the Mongols overran Europe and started the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe, Western and Northern Central Asia, and Western Siberia. Now, wouldn't that piss off the British? Especially if they were black, right? Black nobility. Didn't we see that in that Côte d'Ivoire, right? In the 14th century, Islam turned into the declared territory beneath Khan and placed mostly Turks and Mongols communication in the Chipchak speech. They were also called the Tartars by Russia and Westerners. So there you go. It even admits that that was the Tartars. Why do we not call them Ottoman? Why do we have to use these other terms? But now, came across something interesting this morning while I was trying to prepare for this, and it wasn't going to be this long. But then, it's Shabbat, so I'm praying. Abba, what should I say today? What should I write? What should I put in here? I'm drinking my coffee, and I throw on YouTube, and it just starts playing. One of my channels I follow is Flat Earth British. Martin, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Nice guy and everything. Definitely awake. And he brings up this idea of these traveling cities. And I put together a little something, something, using some of his, using some of his thick pictures that he gathered. He did a great job. We're going to take a look here. So now let's think about this. Think about it. Dang it, I gotta have both of them open. All right, if this thing that happened, this mud flood, were actually very, very recent here, late, like between the 1700s and 1800s, turn of the 19th century, somewhere in there, right? Then you have, okay, so let's say building up to that event, you have all that stuff that I just said. The Turks, the Mongols, the Tartars taking over everything, taking over the world, having their base up at the North Pole, like running, free electricity for everyone. This is something I touched on last time. This is part of the thing. This empire, Tartaria, supposedly was harvesting energy from the ether. They knew how to reflect energy off the dome and get it, and use the vibrational energy of the ether and everything to harvest electricity. So it was a free society. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I probably shook the camera real bad. It was a society where I guess you weren't being charged for electricity. A lot of these cities had large aqueducts that brought clean water to everyone at no cost, just for living there. So, of course, our parasites, once they started to get their patents and figure things out, they figured out how they could charge for energy. They were sick and tired of being ruled by this black nobility, and I believe that the parasites are obviously white and Aryan, and so that's how they did it. But before all that, we have these, it looks like when they took out the Tartarians, there was all this Freemasonry, these amazing cities and buildings just left over, just left behind. And it's amazing how they were able to put all these structures and buildings in all these continents and all these coasts so quickly. Like if they only ruled between, say, 1200 and 1800 or 1700 or somewhere in there, then how did they have time, or how did they have the resources, or how can, in some of these places where you see these cathedrals and these Tartarian architecture that's left behind, it's in these rural cities on these continents that are barely populated, where there's no way these people could have built that. And anyway, this Martin guy that I follow on YouTube, he found these photos of cities being shipped. Cities and buildings being shipped. And here's some here. Here we have buildings on boats. Huge Tartarian photos on boats. Look, here's another one. Look at that thing. Look at that. That is clearly like Tartarian looking. Here's a painting. And what do you know? They're delivering these great buildings to somewhere. Here's a guy with, looks like Merlin or something, delivering a building. Here we have great, huge structure being brought in on the ships. Look at the guy up here. Here we have another one. Brought in on ships. And the last one. This one is at the Louisiana Purchase Exposition 1904, and we have all this awesome stuff being brought in on ships. And now, so could this have been how they prepared for the World Expos? Were they really just used as re-education camps where they forced their new history and cultural ideas on the world? Like once they took out Tartaria, I was told that they're at these expositions, sometimes they would have like a group of people and just like have them on display, like, these are Filipinos, see, this is Filipino culture. And like, wouldn't that be perfect if they just got through flip-flopping the races and they wanted to make everyone believe that the Egyptians were white and whatever. Whatever. Part of the race flop, I believe, was part of the reset. But look at here. Look at the list of wars between 1700 and World War One. Look how many wars. Bam, 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 bam. War of the Australian Secession, King George's War, French and Indian War, 7 Years' War, Lord de Montfort's War, American Revolution. We know the American Revolution was BS. So all these wars, so they go to another continent, take out all the remaining people, gather up all the orphans, reclaim all the building, founded all the buildings by masons who they want to put in power, right? Take out all the information about Tartaria, and then put in whoever the heck they want in power, right? And then as soon as they're done, what do they do? We see our list of world fairs. Hang on, there we go. 1830s. Shortly after doing all those wars, they come in, do all these world fairs. And what are they about? Go click on them yourselves, folks. Go look. They're usually just a huge collection of amazing buildings and architecture and some expo, and they'll say, well, all these millions of people showed up in South Wales. Look at all these grand expositions. They supposedly brought in all these huge buildings, had a huge world fair where millions of people traveled the world to come to it. Come on. How are they doing it? Huh? Balloons? And where they re-educated everyone. Before you know it, 1800s, late 1800s, horses and buggies, gold rushes, orphanage trains, incubator babies. Before you know it, it's booming. America's in charge. The British have control of all the banks. The Vatican's got all the religion's influence. The Jesuits are running all the education system. And we have the big mess that we're in today. Blessing and a curse to be awake these days in this messed up, crazy world we live in that's full of lies. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and hopefully at least I debunked the whole idea that Tartary was ancient pre-Messiah, and some more evidence of the great Tartary. What do we do with this information? We know our history now. Can we keep them from repeating it? Boy, I don't think so. There's not enough of us awake. If the powers that be wanted to do another reset, I don't think we could stop them. But hey, at least we'll see what's coming, and hopefully have ourselves walk in the narrow path, because as it says in the scripture, you don't want to be, when the Messiah comes back, you don't want to find yourself in the midst of sin. So if you're curious about any of that sort of thing, you can go back to some of my previous videos that were more religious based. But I've just kind of decided to focus on some of the cooler issues that are bounced around the internet these days, like Tartaria, flat earth, mud flood. So I'll see you guys next time. Have a good week.